In a previous video, I gave some simple tips on how to improve your handwriting. Many of you asked for a sample sheet so you could practice. Don't say I never give you anything. Hey everyone, CJ Carter here with another video on handwriting, just in time for National Handwriting Day. I apologize for the wait, but I had a novel to finish. So without further ado, here it is, CJ Roundhand. It's not the most perfect sample sheet you will ever see, but it will give you a foundation to write something similar to what I did in the previous video. So let me give you a little bit of context, and then I'll talk about some of the features of the script. Like many of you, I've long been a little envious of how people used to write prior to the age of the ballpoint pen. There was a style and legibility that we seem to have lost. For me, one of the touchstones was the United States Declaration of Independence. For many Americans, this is the most obvious example of old-time handwriting that comes to mind. It is written in engrosser script, a professional version of the then commonly taught style known as Roundhand. This form was used for important documents, including those intended to be engraved. The foundation of CJ Roundhand comes from here. Since I penned a full-sized version of the Declaration for an artwork of mine, I grew very familiar with the style. I then took that hand and personalized it into something I could write with every day. Over time, I developed a script that is reminiscent of Roundhand, but also has some modifications to suit my taste. I encourage you to adapt it to suit your own. Just make sure to keep it legible. The first thing to look at are the ascenders on the minuscules, or small letters. They are open but narrow. This contrasts with the descenders, which are straight. I ultimately chose not to loop them to give the writing a cleaner line, especially with words like syzygy or dizzying. Actually, the descenders here do tend to have a slight hook at the end, but in practice, I often just leave them straight. And since P and Q didn't want to mind their P's and Q's, their descenders break the pattern. Q, because that's what Q's do, and P simply because I loop it more often than not. It can just as easily be straight. Please note that the body of the P is open, like the tail of an N, not a closed oval like an O. Although I made the descenders simple, I still wanted my script to have some flourishing to give it personality. And so I put the loops on the majuscules, or capital letters. As you can see, these capitals aren't shy. The loops aren't drawn, they are swooshed with a flick of the wrist. Since everyone is different as well as inconsistent, that means these expressive letters will rarely have an identical twin. Something you do need to pay attention to with the caps is that these four letters, if not written correctly, can easily be mistaken for each other. L and S are distinguished by the size and position of their loops, while J and Y differ only in how they are begun. The J has a simple upstroke, while Y has an undercurve. One mechanical tip: the O is formed with a counterclockwise oval, while the Q is drawn clockwise, with the tail being made with a continuous smaller loop at the bottom. Other than that, the majuscules are pretty straightforward. The important thing is to have fun with them. Lastly, we have the numbers. I opted to form them in a more arcane style where their size and positioning varies. Please note that I crossed the 7 to distinguish it from the 1, which has a hat, and I slashed the 0 to clearly indicate it isn't an O. And that's pretty much it. CJ Roundhand is a fairly traditional script that is easy to use. It is serious enough for official correspondence, but has enough style to be comfortable in more casual writing. And before I sign off, I want to thank you all for your patience. I've been promising this video for a while, but like I said, I had a book to finish. And here it is. Android Me is a science fiction novel about how the first sentient android uses her skill and cunning to survive being the first sentient android. It's filled with adventures across the U.S. and around the world. Just click on the link to get to the official page. And speaking of links, I've also included a link in the description to the sample page I used in this video. And that's it for this episode. I hope you found it useful, and until next time, stay creative and keep on practicing.